Hey guys, Matt here, and welcome again to my house. We are in the series called Fixer Upper, and we're spending the whole series at my house because we're talking about how do we build strong homes, building strong families. So I'm here with my dog and my kids. My kids are building some Legos, and as they're building, we began the series talking about how do we build strong families, and that begins with our foundation. We looked at God's blueprints last week about how do we build this framework to have a strong family. And in Ephesians 5 and 6, it lays it out for us. We talked about beginning with this foundation of God, that He will guide us and He will direct us. And so we want to, as it said in Ephesians 5, 1 and 2, to be imitators of God, to live a life of love. When God's love fills our life, it can guide us, it can direct us, it can move us towards experiencing our best life as individuals and a family. And so that will overflow then. His love fills our life and overflows to our relationships. And so there's this foundation of God, and then the framework continues with a married couple, a husband and a wife together as one, where there's mutual submission and sacrifice together. And then kids who follow their parents who are following God, and there's this structure and framework in God's blueprint. It says that kids should obey their parents, not parents obeying their kids. If it kind of flip-flops that way, it's almost like that Jenga tower with no structure on the bottom and it just falls apart. It's amazing how when we get off of the foundation, how things can get wobbly and come off the hinges so quickly. So we want to build on this foundation and this blueprint that God has laid out for us. So this week we're going to be continuing our series, and my kids are building some Legos. And so Emma, what are you building? Emma's building a car. Eli, hold up what you're building. Let's see it. Hold it up. A person. Okay. So what if I told you guys were supposed to be building a house? That would be not a very good house, would it? Well, you guys didn't know that, did you? Because I didn't tell you. Today, we're talking about we want to build together. If we're going to build on that foundation that God set out for us, we need to do it together. We need to be one, all on the same page, building together. Last week, as we talked about building a foundation, we looked at this verse in Ephesians 5 and also into Ephesians 6, because it's the blueprint that God has given us so that we can build strong families. And one of the verses in there said, for a man will leave his father and mother and be united with his wife, and the two will become one. It talks about that being one, being on the same page, being together. In a marriage, it's so important. It's two people coming together as one. Maybe you've even seen someone light a unity candle because it's a symbol of that union together, two becoming one. And they want to be on the same page and be one, whether that is spiritually or physically or emotionally or financially, in every way, being one. It's so important to a marriage. But I think that being one plays out in more than just a marriage. It can play out in all of our family relationships. As we look to build strong families, we want to build together. See, what happens sometimes is that someone starts building their career, and all of a sudden it begins to suck up their life and their time and their energy, and they start kind of building in their own direction. And sometimes we can get busy with all these different activities or things in our schedule, and we start building in a different direction. And pretty soon we're not building together anymore. We're not building on the same foundation. We got to build together as one. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Fixer Upper, but Chip and Joe are the hosts, and they build and design these homes. They take a kind of a beat up home and they turn it into this beautiful home. But the whole process begins with Chip's favorite day, demo day. He likes it because he gets to knock walls down and things like that. But demo day is like taking the walls down to get down to the studs. It's opening up a room so he has the open floor plan so you can see through better, and it's taking out the old or the broken things to bring in new and beautiful things. As we're trying to build together as one, as a family, I wonder if we need a demo day. Maybe your family is full of different agendas or building in different directions. Maybe you're more fit for the show Hoarders than you are Fixer Upper because you've been building in all these different directions. Maybe we need a demo day to get down to what's most important, to get down to the studs. What's that important thing? Where's the studs in your family? Insert dad joke there, right? All the dads are like, the stud's right here. Maybe you've done the thing, you got the stud finder and you go over yourself and make it beep. Yeah, dads, we know you've done that. I might have even done that myself. But the idea is, let's get down to the studs. Let's get down to what's most important. Let's demo out all the things that aren't important so we can build upon a foundation and build upon the framework and build together. You know, on the show Fixer Upper, this is like the last season. This was like big news because Chip and Joe have been really successful and the show is doing really good, and they said this is the last season. There's all these different rumors out there about why it is and all these different things, but if you listen to what they say, they were talking about how thankful they are for the success of the show, but how they felt they were just getting off course a little bit. They were building in these different directions. They had to deal with the fame and the success, and they had to deal with the scheduling, and the show is one more thing. And they said they didn't want to drift in their relationship, in their family, or get off course. They wanted to basically do some demo on things in their life so they can focus on what's most important, so they can build together in their marriage, in their family, and on the foundation that God has for them. For them, it was saying, this stuff is good, but we want to build upon the foundation of what's most important. So we're going to demo out what's not important, because we want to do like it says in this series, have this long view to train up our children in the way they should go, as it says in Proverbs 22, to build up our families so we can experience our best life ahead. Maybe you need a demo day to get down to what's most important. Last week we talked about having these blueprints because it allows us to create this firm foundation, and this week as we're talking about building upon that foundation and we want to build together as one, we want to look again at the blueprints that God has for us in Ephesians 5 and 6. Because we want to not just know these blueprints, but we want to build upon them together, building in the right direction. We said that foundation last week begins with being imitators of God, as it says in Ephesians 5:1. In Ephesians 5:2, it says we should live a life of love. When we make that the foundation, it fills our life with love. It allows us to build this framework in our family of love. And so that leads us to some other parts in the verse that talk a little bit about that demo day like we just talked about. It goes on in the next couple of verses that says, if there's even a hint of immorality or impurity or greed or selfishness, it's like we need to demo that out. We need to get rid of that. It says in verse 11, in Ephesians 5, it says, have nothing to do with fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. It says, have nothing to do with any fruitless activities, any darkness, any of that impurity or selfishness or greed. It says, demo that out, expose it, knock the walls out there, and let's open this thing up. We want to demo all that stuff out. Instead, it goes on to say a few verses later, be careful how you live. In verse 15, it says, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity. It's like our kids are only around once. We only have this chance once. We want to make the most of it so we can train them up in the way they should go. Our lives, we only get a chance to be at these different stages once. Let's make the most of every opportunity. Let's not just know about the blueprints, but let's let this foundation guide us and direct us, making wise decisions. And let's do it together. A couple verses later, it talks about doing it, building together as a family. It says, let's be filled with the Spirit in verse 18. In verse 19, speak to one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Sing music and in your heart to the Lord, always giving thanks to God the Father for everything in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. It talks about doing it together, submitting to each other. It talks about singing songs and hymns and kind of sharing God's words with each other. It talked about doing things like giving thanks to each other and to God together. It's all about building together, demoing out all of those things like selfishness and impurities and greed and things like that, getting rid of all that fruitless activity, getting rid of all the darkness, and let's make wise decisions, making the most of every opportunity and build together. If we're going to build together, what that means for us is that we need to demo out any selfishness, and we need to all be on the same page, building in the same direction. The first step to building together as one is all about demo day, and it's about demoing out or getting rid of any of our own selfishness. If we're going to build a strong family, we can't be building our own foundation. We need to build our foundation, us building together. Last week we looked at some of the roles. We talked about kids obeying your parents and honoring your father and mother. That's like trusting them. It's not all about you. The world doesn't revolve around you as a kid. You're following after your parents. We talked about husband and wives and this sacrificial and mutual submission to each other, about wives respecting their husbands and husbands loving their wife with this, where you give yourself away and build her up. You know, whenever I do premarital counseling, I always talk to couples and I say it's not about 50-50 or give or take. It's about 100% give. When you're both giving to each other, your needs are met, you're building each other up, and you don't have to worry about if you're getting yours or not. Now, when we talk about demoing out ourselves, that doesn't mean like we never do anything we enjoy doing. That doesn't mean we can't enjoy life or do things we like to do. What that means is that we need to be on building together. And sometimes that means it's not about me or what I want to do. It's about what's best for our family. Whether you're a family of one, a family of two with kids or grandkids, it's thinking through what's best for our family. What's best for us to build upon this foundation. We gotta get rid of our own selfish agendas, our own selfishness, and do what's best for the family. We need to demo out our selfishness. The second part of building together is about being on the same page. Kind of goes back to the beginning when we were looking at my kids building the Legos. It's like they were building a face, a car. Like they didn't know what they were supposed to be building because I didn't tell them. Like we got to be on the same page if we're going to build together. Sometimes we just get so busy and we're just reacting to life. Like we said last week, we don't want to do that. We want to have our foundation set, and we want to make that clear so we're building together. The Bible talks about this, and actually in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Here's what it says in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Verse 5, it says, "Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, and with all of your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your house and on your gates." You know, in those verses, it said, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your strength and everything that you are. It's like, that's the foundation. We want to be imitators of God, build our families upon Him. Then it says, here's these commands I've given you today. It's like, hey, here's the blueprints for how to build a strong family. And He said, take them to heart. Like, don't just know about God, but like, we want to have it as part of our life, a part of who we are, changing who we're becoming. It's like we don't want to just know the blueprints or see the picture. We want to actually build the framework for our families. He goes on to say that we should impress it upon your kids. It's like we want to train up our kids in the way they should go. So when they grow, they won't turn from it. It's the same idea. But if that's going to happen, they have to take it to heart themselves. They got to hear it with their ears, but then take it to heart. We need to communicate it in what we say, but also in what we do. And it talks about in those verses to talk about it when you're at home or when you're walking down the street. It's like as you're going through life, whether you're at home or on the road, it's like talk about it. It says talk about it in the morning when they wake up and at night and every part of our life. See, what it comes down to is that we need to not just say it, but if we want to be on the same page, we also have to live it out. Parents, we got to model it. Really, even with husbands and wives, we need to model it for each other as well, because we're all selfish and we all struggle at times. We got to live it out, not just in what we say, but in what we do, day and night, at home or on the go. It's an interesting thing is with our kids, Journey Kids, we have this Parent Cue app that we have, and we have these resources that we pass out every Sunday, these parent sheets, and it gives you some tools and some tips to talk to your kids about these important things, about how to build their life upon this foundation of God. And it gives you ideas at bedtime and at dinner time or on the car ride home. So maybe you want to look at that app before your kids get in the car when you're picking them up at school, and it'll give you an idea what to maybe talk to them about on the way home. And so just one more way we can communicate it, because if we're going to build together, We got to be on the same page. And that's more than just talking about it. We got to live it and model it as well. You know, as we go through life, a lot of times we drop our kids off at things. We drop them off at school so a teacher can teach them, or at practice so a coach can coach them. And this is one thing that's not a drop-off. If we want to build a firm foundation and then build together as one on that foundation, we got to live it out in what we say and what we do. If we want to be on the same page, we need to communicate it with words, but also in how we live. And then we can build together as one. We've been talking throughout this series about Proverbs 22:6. Train up your child in the way they should go, so when they grow old, they will not turn from it. That's what we want to do, is we want to build up our family so we can experience our best life ahead, whether it's with our kids or even with our marriages, or even if you're thinking about your family in the future, or whether your kids are grown up. We all want to come together and build together. That means it starts with the foundation. God is our foundation. We want to be imitators of Him. We want to live a life of love so His love fills our life and overflows to our relationships. We want Him to guide us and to direct us. He's given us His blueprints in His words. And so we need to do more than just know about the blueprints. We need to build upon them and do it together. That means demoing out any of our own selfishness or impurities, or getting rid of those things that are fruitless or holding us back. That means building up each other. That means coming together so we're all building in the same direction to build our home together. Let's get rid of ourselves, let's model it for our kids, and let's build together as one.